gonna rent a car cheap,
Yeah.
especially
Okay,
if you're there
we'll,
off.
we'll bring November 1st City Council work meeting to order. Is there a motion on tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda. I'd like to add one item. Number 7 would be a brief discussion on possibly vacating Birch Road, and then number 8 would be adjourn.
Making what road?
Birch Road, vacating,
Oh, vacating Birch Road.
possibly.
Okay, and then we'll make adjournment number 8. Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Motion made, second, discussion. Hearing none, to the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 3, East Bethel Fire Department Operational Policies and Guideline Review and Duty Crew Discussion.
All right, thanks, Mayor and Council. It's good to see everybody.
Good evening.
Tonight, there's actually 2 documents that we're going to take a look at. These are the policies and guidelines that the fire department operate on. I want it known that this is not a new document. This document's been around a long time. This is more of an update reflecting what we do right now. It's been a few years since we've actually taken a look at updating it. And so with that, how would you like me to proceed, Mayor? Do you want me to go through and?
Well, I've got several comments going through. Generally, let's like go by section. I don't know how others feel.
I say we just go section to section, just the way it is.
Okay, so let's, I'm desperately trying to get it downloaded again. Whoever's got it open, any comments on section 1 or any questions? Section 2,
I got one on employment eligibility.
okay,
I see you've got firefighters must hold a valid state, B license. You got that crossed out.
Yes.
Why is that crossed out now?
Well, in the past, East Bethel was one of the very, very few fire departments that required a Class B license. That's not, it's not within state law that you have to have a Class B license to drive a fire truck. When to drive a fire truck, you're exempt. Part of there's 2 reasons why we're walking away from the Class B. One is because we can give our people more of a training, driver's training course and practice and that type of thing, integrated with our normal training. And then number 2 is just the hassle that it goes through trying to get your people licensed for a Class B, especially for something that the law doesn't dictate.
Okay.
Like I say, East Bethel is one of the very, very few fire departments that had that in. That was in when I got here. So
you guys are exempt then?
yeah, we're actually exempt from state law. Right?
Okay. Because that's my next question. Is there any insurance issues or
No.
things like that if you
No, there's not.
Okay.
So that's why that would be there
Okay.
or not be there.
okay.
And that's Mayor and Council, that's a huge savings of time, money, and effort, let me tell you. Huge, that we can, direct the people, in a different way.
Okay, questions on section 2? Section 3. Only question I have is, on 3, it's 3.1. At the end of 3.1, you're adding a statement that says the fire chief may declare that experience and/or courses are equivalent to the listed qualifications.
Yes.
I understand the statement. It doesn't quite fit there, but this document doesn't list the qualifications.
I think it'll list the qualifications a little bit further on.
I thought that was in the second document.
yeah, you know, we can keep it there, or we could take it out of this, you know, that, you know, I certainly understand that.
Well, I guess my question is, seems that the purpose of that section is really to talk about how it's being posted. So the statement seems out of place.
Okay,
I mean, I think you say it somewhere else in this document too.
Yes.
And I understand the reason for it.
Mhm.
It just seems like it's out of place, that's
Okay.
all, so. Any other questions on 3? Section 4.
I had a question on time cards. Is that something we don't currently do?
yes, we do it.
Oh,
Okay, so we, payroll is a huge function of, believe it or not, of a paid-on-call fire department, okay? So, like tonight, is everybody has to sign their payroll, okay? And believe it or not, we sometimes have trouble motivating people to come in and sign their time card. Especially, we had that issue during, last year during the COVID shutdown, where sometimes we would have people who had passed 90 days of, so in other words, like 3 time cards there. And then you just couldn't get them to come in.
so this is a new we're just adding the regulation
Where-
to try
you-
and
you got-
kick them to come in.
Right, they gotta sign it. You know, Jackie, you know, she does the payroll,
Mhm.
and she's gotta have it signed, and auditors want it signed, so, whatever it takes to help motivate the people to come in,
Okay.
you know, so, that's why that's there.
Have you ever looked at electronic time card or timesheets?
I don't, yes, and I would love to do it, but we don't have the means to do it right at this time, yeah.
I
So,
imagine there's expense with that too.
yeah,
On this time card thing, there's a grammatical error. It says, prepared by the city, R will be available to sign. So that is wrong.
Yes, I had that note too. The second sentence is kind of reworded.
yeah, we can, I can fix that for you.
Okay, anything else on section 4? Section 5. Section 6. And then section 7. I have a question. Wait till you get there. Under 7.1, if you go to, if you page down to the next page there, Jack,
At the top there,
there's deletes.
yeah.
And so,
Oh, okay. So, the reason why those are deleted is not because the benefit's not there. The benefit changes. It's a moving target. And by us putting that
okay,
dollar amount in, it might be completely different if an
Okay.
individual has to.
my question was, if you're deleting that, shouldn't you be deleting the whole line above it?
No.
So, but the benefits, okay,
Yeah,
you're
right.
just taking out some of the
Right, yeah.
descriptor of it, okay, okay, that questions, answers that. Anything else on section 7? 8, 9, I don't think you meant changes in 9. And then there's attachments, right? What's the first one? Okay, this is where I got confused. So now we're into the next document, right after 9,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is
Guidelines and
guidelines and policies,
policies.
okay. So anyway,
And am I correct, this was updated in February of 16, and this is the first time it's been updated since? I'm just looking at the date on the bottom of the page.
Yeah, this document's actually, the next one actually was authored, I think, in 2010, and then was updated in 16.
Okay.
so I'll get through the table of contents, which is long. Section 1. section, okay, this is where I'm looking at. This is what I was looking for before. So page, hang on, Jack, you might have went by it. Page 39 of the packet. What page you on there?
That's where
There's
I
two
am
more.
too.
Keep going.
The fire review panel,
Why does mine say different?
that's,
Got page 40 of the packet. There we go, okay. So then one more. Why was I thinking 39? So this chart's really old.
Yeah, actually,
That's older than 16. That's like 2010.
yeah, this is really old, and actually, that's been striked out.
Oh, the whole thing is
Yeah,
stricken out?
yeah, both of those flow charts, organizational charts.
Oh, you have it in the title. I see. I noticed that.
And what we're gonna do, Mayor, is we're still gonna include them, but we're gonna put them like on the very front, because these seem to change a little bit more frequent than the rest of the stuff.
Okay,
So, that's why we're gonna do it.
all right. So then my next change is on page 46 of the packet, which is 2.4.1. It's actually not changed, it's just. All right, keep going, right there, so.
So I think that sentence starts,
There's a sentence that really,
above, no
cumbersome.
photographs of incidents,
right.
yeah,
scenes,
Yep.
training. Yeah.
so it just needs to be cleaned up.
And that's actually from the social media, the city social media policy. No social media posting of photographs, documents, or information about the fire department unless approved. We want to make sure, it's not that we don't agree with social media, we just want to be able to manage it a little bit better.
Do you have an approved person besides yourself to direct social media?
I don't at this time.
So my question on this was, how does the auxiliary fit into this?
Well,
Because they have a website, or
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Facebook page, yeah.
yeah, and I guess, I don't know if we have any authority over that.
Okay,
But we do, you know, on,
because there's a lot of training that's posted there, and,
I tell you what really kind of scares me is that maybe we're on an accident scene or a fire or something like that, and somebody takes a photograph, you know, innocently of something.
right,
And then, you know, a couple of years later, we're in court, you know, for, you know, maybe negligence or something like that. And then they, you know, starts
Yeah.
subpoenaed, you know, telephones and records and things like that. In addition, I don't want to cause any more harm to, you know, the victims either. So,
no, it makes sense.
Along with Steve's question, though, who does have authority over the auxiliary?
the auxiliary,
I think they're
In
their
and
own
of
separate.
themselves?
yeah, right.
Well, the city council has a little control in the fact that we have two members on there, and plus we supply them funding, so.
Well, no, this is the auxiliary.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, auxiliary's different. yeah.
They're self-funded, aren't they?
Well, they're still firefighters, right, so if they still gotta follow even though they're a member of auxiliary, although,
Well, are they spouses, though?
Yeah,
Because
most of
auxiliary is
them
spouses.
Yes.
I'm not saying there's an issue, I'm just saying how does it apply, so, when you think about that, so. I don't think it needs to be in here, but that's just a question I had, so.
Well, that might be a discussion for the auxiliary to have.
Well, I mean, it's more if chief has an issue with it, I guess, so
Yeah.
it's,
Or maybe just remind the auxiliary of the social media policy.
Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 active members right now. And, you know, and that changes time to time,
Yeah.
depending on, you know, life changes.
Okay. Anything else in section 2? Section 3. Section 4. And then section 5. I've got a suggestion for section 5.3. Page 58, keep going. Yep, let's keep going right to this page. One more page down. It's clear on this next one. So I see what you're doing in here. Like, let's look at the captain one. The first 2 lines are requirements, correct?
Right.
So it's like a prerequisite. Then the next, no, don't move it. Then the next 3 bullets are desired qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
Then the last 2 are more like requirements of the job. So, because I see you put in a bullet for desired qualifications, so it seems like you're trying to pull those 2 out. I think it'd be clearer if you made almost like a table of this or some other format. It's just a little confusing, that's all.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how to do that either. Their format was there, and, you know, I was trying to build off,
Yeah.
off of it, but,
I mean, to be a captain, you've got to meet all the lieutenant qualifications.
Yeah.
Then you have to have 5 years' experience, so that's prerequisite.
right. And then it'd be great if you're officer 2.
But then you say, then it seems like it's a requirement to be certified within 12 months. So that's not really a qualification either, then. That's just expectation.
That would be, I think, more of an expectation. Actually, I think the certification within 12 months of appointment, that hasn't been working, you know, especially with the backlog on the certification board.
Okay.
We got people that have been waiting for 18 months to, you know, take an exam. So, actually, that certification within 12 months, I think that would be more of a highly, you know, suggestion, you know, or.
Well, I guess I'm not commenting on the content as much as it is the format, just to, so it's not so confusing, so.
I agree. I'll, you know, this whole document has to go through one more format,
Okay.
you know. And it's a very it's built off of a Word document, and it's an old Word document. So it's sometimes very hard to manipulate it, but I'll work on something for all of them.
Okay. Anything else in section 5?
Well, I have a question
Sure.
about that
Yep.
certification within 12 months. So do they just need to have the application in within 12 months, and then it's
Oh,
up to the state?
No,
or-
but yeah, originally, it was certification in hand, you know,
Yeah,
so, and, you know, one thing I'll volunteer here is that I sat on the certification board for 20 years. I left it here about 18 months ago. And, you know, since then, with the pandemic and everything slowed up. They're in the process now of going through with new executive directors. So it's going to be a little bit, I think, before they get, really back on track. So, I like the certification process. I always have, because that helps justify the training budget is what it does.
Hmm.
But I just had to have wording in there in case we can't get it done.
Okay.
You expect it to be back to 12 months, though, at
I would think
some
so at
point.
some point in time,
Okay.
right?
Okay, anything else on section 5? Section 6. Section 7. And maybe you're gonna tell me this changes too, but on 7.1. Where is it? There's a table on page 77 of the packet.
Where the holidays are?
So there's a table of types of single station calls.
Yes.
Is Station 3 not included in single station calls?
Well, Station 3 still operates as a substation of Station 1.
It still is, okay.
Right. We're probably going to be looking at changing that around, but not at this point.
Okay.
And so I can tell you that Station 3 would be the same type of calls, you know.
Oh, I expect it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then on page 81 of our packet, there's the map,
Yes.
and we don't show Station 3 on the map.
No. In
Page down a little bit more, Jack.
so that little red
It looks like it's there, but it's not labeled, so.
So that's Station 3 right there. And then once again, Station 3 is a substation of Station 1, so whatever Station 1 calls come out, they answer those. Here's the way it works. When the page goes out, there's a tone for a single station call. The tone will go out for Station 1, and the tone will go out for Station 3. We have taken that step where they have their own tones now.
Okay.
Okay, and then they'll give the type of emergency and the address, location, and any other pertinent information. So that's why it doesn't say, Station 3, specifically.
Okay.
I'm not quite, I'll tell you this, I'm also not quite sure how, what part of Station 3, what grids that Station 3 is going to cover. So, that's something to be discussed, and that's going to take some time. Incidentally, the reason why we get all these grids, so years ago, it wasn't that many years ago, when they gave an address, then they told you grid 7C. So then and this is before Google Maps, before that. So then you would open up your map book and go to 7C, and you knew that address was in there somewhere.
Okay.
So we've kept, East Bethel Fire has kept the grids. And the reason why is because they're real valuable. We can sort calls per grid.
Mm.
So I could tell you, in 5B, what type of calls we're getting there. So, and that's why and then it became valuable when we were planning, how to lay out the zones, because we could look at call volume, and at the time we were trying to equal everything out. And we came pretty close.
Okay. Jack, can you put that view to full page so I can see the full page? Okay, so I see 4 different colors, Station 1, Station 2, and then that yellow line. What's all that mean?
Okay, so the yellow line is actually the boundary line between zones for Station 2 and Station 1.
Okay,
This map I actually created was actually driving times from the fire station and that helped us also come up with the zones. But that, those were driving times. And I think the driving time were, you know, we were looking at 5 minutes at the time. How far could you go from Station One, for example, in 5 minutes? And that's how, you know, then we did the same thing with Station Two. And you can see there was some overlap there.
So, I can understand that, how you got to that, but in terms of what the map is trying to present, is that
No.
important at all?
No, unfortunately, that was the only map I had at the time when we had to publish it.
Is that about Hudson Book?
No.
Looks like it is.
No.
Is there a third, like brownish color? Is there a pink, a brown, like right south of 230?
That's the you see,
That's the overlap.
That's the overlap, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe we can have a new
We'll
map
get it
put
clean.
in there.
We'll put in a clean map.
Okay, there, clear all that up, so.
So that map is actually made by the county GIS people.
Okay,
And they actually help us quite a bit with maps. But we'll put my plan was to put a clean map in there.
okay.
And then Mark, on calls, you got Station 1 and 2, during the day, it's an all call, right?
Yeah, right.
So, I mean,
You're right.
that might be something, I don't know if you want to put that in there, but it's an all call, I know that, so.
Well, I think it is in here.
It is, okay,
Yeah,
I
okay,
think I saw that too. yeah.
okay.
Okay, any other questions on this item? Okay, 7.1.3.
COVID.
COVID type calls. My only comment on it is this whole section needs to be really reformatted, take out all the bold, and it's,
Yeah, and
it doesn't fit the document, basically. I mean, I understand the emphasis.
so the Alina, the new manager, took a look at, you know, this also, and his suggestion, I wanted to bring that up to the group here, the council, was not only COVID type calls, but also call it any type of flu type calls, other flu type calls. So if it's all right with the council, I would probably include that. And then,
Well, couldn't you make it even easier and just say, you know, non-injury medical calls or sickness calls? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's predominantly gonna be flu and COVID, but,
Yeah, we'd probably prefer to at least leave it as flu-type calls,
okay,
because that's the way they come out.
okay. But just that, you know, it's like it's shouting at you at times in this section, so I would just look at format there. And then 7.2.3, I just have a question. This is just for information. Where is it? Oh, I lost it. No, I think it's on page 88. Anyhow, there's a reference to a fire grenade.
Yes.
Can you explain for
Thank
all of
you.
our edifice what a fire grenade, that doesn't sound right, so.
Thank you for asking that. So the duty cars, the duty car, the chief's car, and the deputy chief carry a container, and they have what we call fire grenades.
It's page 89,
And what they are,
middle of the page.
what they are is you take them,
Right
just
there.
like a grenade, you pull the pin, and then you toss them into the fire. You want to do that as soon as you get there. That's why they're not on the fire trucks. And what we're trying to do is just buy us some time. And as soon as they heat up, they actually explode, and there's a suppressant that is released.
So it's more like an extinguisher grenade.
Right.
I hear fire grenade, it's like, it's gonna create a fire, so.
Yeah. Well, it could,
Like a backfire?
but
Have we used these?
haven't used them yet. We
Okay.
haven't had the well, that's the wrong way to say it. No, we haven't used them yet. I've talked to a couple chiefs, mainly the Forest Lake chief that, you know, of course, they take care of Columbus and right next to us. And he's got their police department carrying these things, and they've knocked down a couple big fires, one in a townhouse. There was a kitchen fire, and they were able to knock that down and use less than 100 gallons of water
Huh.
to extinguish the rest of it. And what you're doing, you're just buying time. You know,
Right.
you're not trying to put the whole thing out because you're not gonna.
Just trying to control.
Yeah, right.
So they have expiration dates and all the things, like all suppressant
Yep.
type stuff,
Yep,
things do.
Right. So, and you wouldn't use this if the fire had vented through the windows already and busted the windows or, you know, burned through the roof, because then all your chemicals would go out.
Mm.
You would do it in a fire where the doors and windows are closed and toss it in. That's where they work the best.
So it's really marketed as a fire grenade?
Yes.
Oh my God. That's a bizarre name.
Yeah. We were talking to the company, and we're gonna try to figure out how we can incorporate that with our open house next year.
Mhm.
You know, just to show people that, you know, yeah, it really, really works.
Does the sheriff's department carry those?
No.
Have you talked to them
Yeah,
about that?
they won't carry those.
Because they'd be the first ones,
Right.
really the first ones there.
So
So
they're kind of excited to see how it works.
that name scares me though, so. I'd hope the house is cleared,
Yeah, that's right.
you know. Okay. Education. And then 7.3.5 is my last question, where it states, we're approved for 43 firefighters. I thought that number was a bit lower than that.
Yeah, I thought it was 40. I actually saw that, and I think that was one of my officers that was maybe thinking. You know, personally, I would think that if we kept it where we are now at 40, could you tell me what
Page
was the number again?
95 of the packet,
Seven?
and it says, yeah, it's right before 8.1. Yeah, there it is, right there.
Yeah, that's a type, that should be 40.
At the discretion of the senior officer. I don't know who the senior officer is anyway, right? So it's at discretion of council, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Next, the extent of my comments. Anyone else?
I want to go back to page 82 where you're talking about the COVID.
Yeah.
Where it says, when they ask the questions, I think the word screening questions, I think there's a lot of wording in there that could be improved, but I can't think of how to improve it myself right now. But I think when I was reading that, I read it about 3 times before I could figure out what it was talking about. So I have to go back there. When they answer no to the questions, you know, it doesn't say what questions. I'm like, what are they talking
well,
about? And so I think
well,
the
we
word
don't-
screening should be
okay.
in there.
First of all, we don't ask the questions. Dispatch asks, well, they have a series of questions that they'll ask if they suspect COVID.
That's an important call.
Yeah. you don't have-
That's a major call.
So, and what dispatch won't tell us what the answer to each question is, but they'll say, the reporting, you know, for example, the reporting parties has said yes to the questions asked. And the questions are, you know, you have fever? Have you been tested for COVID? Have you been exposed? And it was those type of questions, a series of eight questions they'll ask, I think it is. And then if any of those questions are positive, yes, you know, it's a different protocol that we actually respond to.
Right, I understand that. I just think this comment is vague, and it's probably because it's so apparent to you guys, but to an outsider or anybody new to looking at this would either glaze over it or just not understand it, may not want to ask. So maybe, I just think it needs to be worded different. No to questions from the no, dispatch said all answers were no, or something like that. I just think it's no to questions from dispatch. It could still be a COVID-related call, because I understand what you're saying, but it's not worded very well.
Am I correct in that this document is for the fire department? This is not a public document at
Correct,
all,
right, yeah.
correct?
Right.
Okay. Because when I read it, I was reading it as though I would never come across this anywhere, but the fire department lives and breathes by it.
I think some of the wording can be corrected to make it clear.
In the
But you're
COVID
gonna go
section.
through that again.
Well, there's a
anyways.
few things in there, but this one, just because we were bringing it up, I'm like, okay, I really don't like this wording, I'm gonna say something. And
I think the ones you gotta talk to then, Mark or dispatch, not really you guys. Cause you guys just get the information from dispatch, like you said.
I know, questions, because I'm like, what questions, what are they talking about? And I went to reread above and read below, and I'm like, what are they talking about? So I figured it out, but
Yeah, I mean, that sections isn't, the first sentence doesn't make sense. You like, said, to what questions, so.
It could just be, put in there, even if the reporting parties answered no to questions from dispatch.
yeah, that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
say.
It could be a COVID-involved call. That might just clear it up.
And then Mark, on Appendix C, the last thing that's on there, there are no more carbon monoxide forms required.
No,
Is that why that's all
that's right,
erased?
yeah,
Okay.
that was an old form that
Old
was,
requirement.
that should have never been there in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why that's been taken out.
Okay, any other questions?
I read something, I think it's towards the beginning, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but it talks about, complaints will, or something will, appeals or will go before a review board, but then that review board is crossed off and it just says the fire chief. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Because there is no review board, correct? There is no,
Unless I convenient, if I, yeah.
because it's, the
And there
review
isn't-
board part is crossed off in quite a few
Right.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if, why, if a person has a problem, why there's not gonna be like multiple people, or are there still multiple people that are, but it's not considered a review board? Because I guess it's like the HR person is involved now, and you, and,
Well, I think when we get into the addendum B, or A, I mean, I should say, I think that's where you get into more of the, that type of thing, where it, if I'm not mistaken, that's where it lays out the report of a complaint, and how to report it and who to go to.
And at one point in there, it does say fire chief, it does say city council, it does say deputy, it has a whole list of people you can go to.
yeah. But, so there is no more review board at all? Because I noticed, yeah, like, she said they're crossed out in all the places, but you just said you can still convene one?
It's, yeah, the fire chief may, I still use Artie all the time, Deputy Chief Artie, and I use the two district chiefs all the time. In fact, they also reviewed this when we were going through this and offered, changes.
Okay. If there's no more questions, what's the next steps on this then?
We'll bring it back for, bring the,
Back to,
Excuse
it'll come
me.
to council then for
Yeah.
approval? Okay.
excuse me, probably, last November meeting.
Okay. If you can include the red line version too.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right.
Thank you for the education, sir.
No problem.
Fire
Fire
grenades.
Learned something new tonight. I don't know if I wanted to know, but I know now.
I kind of
I wondered.
All right, thanks, Mark.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Okay, item 4, Norfolk County American Rescue Plan Broadband Funding Program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In May 2021, the Anoka County Board of Commissioners allocated $3.15 million in American Rescue Plan dollars to support local broadband projects for the 21 municipalities in the county. At the October 12, 2021 County Board meeting, the board authorized the publication of the applications and frequently asked questions related to their ARPA broadband funding program. The summary of their program is as follows. Communities can apply for a maximum of $150,000 per project on a 50-50 matching basis. Communities that do not have a need for broadband funding may pass a resolution that their $150,000 appropriation be added back into the program's budget for additional project where other support is needed. Based on staff's discussion with Midco on October 12, 2021, there may be projects that could be considered as a public-private partnership venture in 2022 that would be eligible for this grant. These project areas are Jenkins Street between Briarwood and Deerwood Lane, Gopher Drive between 229th Avenue and Cedar Creek, and 222nd Street between Baton and Xylite Street. Staff followed up on these projects listed above, and Minco provided the following costs. The Jenkins to Briarwood project would be a fiber to the premise project for 25 homes. Total project cost would be $106,000 and require aid in the amount of $31,000 to proceed with the project. Gopher Drive would provide coax for 7 homes. Total project cost would be $35,000 and require aid in the amount of $15,000 to proceed with the project. 222nd Street would be fiber to the premise project for 24 homes. Total project cost would be $95,000 and require aid in the amount of $24,000 to proceed with this project. For all 3 projects, 56 homes would be served, and the aid to construction amount from the city would be $70,000. Of the $70,000 local cost, the county grant could cover half this amount, and the city would be responsible for the remainder. Should Midco be able to secure this commitment from the city by the end of February, these projects could be scheduled for their 2022 work plan. Staff also discussed the extension of service to 4 homes west of Edison Street on Klondike Drive intersection as a possible 2022 project, but this project would not be able to be scheduled for the following year. Should the city desire to participate with Midco on these projects, the source of the matching funds would need to be identified, and an assessment or other fund recovery procedure would have to be established to reimburse the city's direct costs for the match. So in our discussions, we have these 3 areas right here. This is the Gopher Drive project. This is Palisade. City Hall's down here, Palisade going to 229th. This is Cedar Creek, so it would serve 7 homes in this area that currently have no service. The other project area would be the 222nd Street area, which is just east of City Hall. This is 221st, this is Baton, this is 222nd Lane, and it would serve this area in here. And the other project that would be eligible for this funding is the Jenkins Street project area, which is between Briarwood, this is Highway 65, Briarwood and Deerwood Lane. And this would serve approximately 25 homes. So if we want to apply for this grant, we have $70,000 in projects that could be identified. The only thing we need now from Midco, and they're going to get us the information, is to make sure that these projects meet the speeds required of the grant. For now, it's 100 meg of download and upload. except in cases where it's not practical to get the upload speed of 100 megs. It has to be between 20 and 100 megs of upload and scalable to the maximum 100 at some point in the future. So initially, we have 3 areas that Midco is looking at or could do for projects in 2022. And I'm here to answer any questions and request that council consider approving us applying for this $150,000 grant from the county so we can begin some of these service extension improvement projects.
Jack, how is the matching funds aspect of that calculated? Because I looked at that table differently than I think you did.
Which-
Because what page is that table on? It's like 114 of our packet.
113.
113, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So when I looked at project cost, to me, the project cost is complete project cost. So those 3 that comes up to like 236,000. That's the project cost. So, we'll have most of that come from Midco, right?
Correct.
So why isn't that considered a matching?
Midco's funds do not count toward the match
Why is that?
because that's the provisions of the program with Anoka County. I checked with them. So if
But
Midco-
there's a column for it, that's why, I couldn't find any of the description of what the matching funds are, or what qualifies the matching fund. It just says source of funds.
I think this is, what I'm seeing here, is this the table you're talking about?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
This is $100,000 for a total project cost.
okay.
So,
That one has no city funds, whatever that example, their example has no city funds.
well, what they're saying, and I did check with Samantha and asked her, I said, do any of Midco's contributions count toward the in-kind or the match? And she said, no. Whatever Midco puts in, and then whatever the difference is in the aid to construction, let's say it's a $100,000 project, Midco puts in $50,000, the county grant will pay $50,000. Of that $50,000, $25,000 is county funds, $25,000 is city funds. And that's the way it was explained to me.
So what they're saying is they're requiring the city to put cash in.
Correct, that's correct.
Are you
Like a dollar
sure?
per
I've
dollar.
never, if we find a private contributor to put that funds in, there, why would we have to put funds ourselves?
Because this is the difference. Midco is saying to do this one project, this is what they will put in.
Okay,
What the difference in the balance is what qualifies for the grant money from the county.
So, say the first example with Jenkins and Briarwood, total project cost would be $106,000. That would require aid in the amount of $31,000. So the difference between $31,000 and $106,000 is what Midco is contributing.
That's correct, that would be $75,000.
Okay, so
They would
they're-
contribute $75,000 and then the city would be responsible for that balance.
So instead of taking like the total 106,000 and saying we can get a grant for, what would that be, $53,000? And we have to match half of that. Midco's already picking up a large portion of it and saying, this is the portion that,
Whatever Midco puts in, whatever the balance is left between them having the funds to do that, that's where the grant money comes in. So Midco's investment is not included in that. It's the balance between their contribution toward the project cost and then what the extra aid to construction is for them to be able to feasibly do the project.
so the grant would not be funding the whole project.
That's correct,
Midco is already putting in an investment,
correct.
and the balances make the rest of it feasible.
Now, if we were doing this project on our own, let's say we had the capabilities of being an ISP, then it would be whatever half the project cost was.
So, with that in mind, if we said we were gonna do the whole project and we contract out Midco ourselves, then it shouldn't matter to the county.
That's a question I'd have to have them answer.
And that, I'm not saying we should do it to get around it, but I'm saying, I've never seen a matching grant program that works that way. You know, if a project costs $100,000 and, you know, Midco is willing to put in half that cost, the county's, it's a 50-50 grant. What are they granting? They're only it's almost like a stop grant or a gap grant.
A gap grant.
The
Because
50,
it's the gap, they're only looking at the gap, they're not looking at the whole project cost.
the 50-50 grant though is only, in other words, the county will match dollar for dollar what the city puts up to $150,000 to be used for aid to construction in these projects.
Okay,
So it's just whatever portion the city has, they will match that portion.
That's correct.
that's what,
After
that's what,
everything
I didn't see that anywhere in these documents where it says that, that's why I'm asking.
Well,
So-
and I did call Samantha and ask her for a clarification on that, and that's what she explained it
So
to
that,
me.
so then I think we need to ask the question, how I put it the first time, is what if the city contracts the work itself? Midco is just a subcontractor to us, so on a $100,000 project, we'll put in $50,000 into it,
I think one of
and
the,
Midco's gonna pick it all up. So then it doesn't cost the city taxpayers anything.
I will ask the question, let me see if I can find one of the questions here.
It's, to me, it's odd that a government agency would go to a local municipality and say it's a 50-50 match. Usually grants are, that's a pretty high percentage.
Generally, that's the percentage on DNR grants, it's 50-50, but then they're doing the whole project cost if you look
Right.
at DNR. But this is to contribute gap money to furnish these.
Is it gap money? Is that what it,
That's the way it was explained to me.
okay. Because they're not gonna be able to spend that money. There's no way Linwood and these other municipalities are gonna spend $75,000 of cash.
Samantha told me that there's already been 3 or 4 that are gonna pass a resolution, turning their money back in. Whatever's turned back in is then eligible on a first come, first served basis for other projects that anybody else wants to apply for.
So we need to come up with more projects.
Yeah, it says you can do them 1 at a time or 3 at a time.
Well,
or
and that was
6
my
at
other
a time.
comment is, why are we only asking for a portion of what we are eligible for?
This is only what we have a project identified for with the cost. This is just an example. We could have 3 projects ready to go for 2022. This money doesn't have to be spent until December 31st, 2023, so.
Right, but shouldn't we then include those future projects now, so we're in the running for the money while the money's there? Why wait next year when Midco is ready to do a project? We'll say it's not gonna be done for another year, but we can still ask for,
Yeah,
do the grant application.
This is what we'll do, but this is the only ones they've identified for us so far. So I just want to give some examples of what's readily available, what we could do immediately. But as soon as we can get them to give us costs for what their 2023 schedule is, and we can break that down and put that in there. And then hopefully by that time, by February or March of this year, we'll have some projects that'll hopefully be identified from the Finley study.
Now, for instance, why can't we add Klondike to this group of?
Well, we certainly can, but we don't have any cost estimates now, and that wasn't on their schedule for 2022. So in order to know how much we need, we need to know what the costs are. And that's what
Well,
we'll
and
have
it
to get
has
from
to be
them.
done by, it's in here, it has to be done by December of 2023. So if
But-
we don't
Well,
have,
if the application's done by then, right?
Well, it's kind of weird. That's the deadline for the application and the deadline for the expenditure of the funds too. It says
it's
later-
all the
yeah.
same, cause you can apply, once you get
Yeah.
one, if there's still money available, you can apply for a second one. And you can keep applying as
Yeah.
long as there's money available, but it has to be done by December 31st of 2023.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
kind of my point. If
So
the
if
money's
we-
still available.
If the money's
Yeah.
still
So-
available, so you apply for,
I'd just soon apply for it and if it gets to the point
Yeah.
where, I can't believe we tell Midco we get funding to do stuff to give them more customers, they
Yeah.
wouldn't like kicking in gear.
Well,
and get some sign
and I feel like that would provide them some incentive to maybe accelerate some of their projects that are marginal. But the other thing is too.
they're doing everybody, they're doing Bethel, and they're doing Oak Grove, and they're doing St. Francis.
I think we'll have some projects that'll be identified by Finley early in the game, which would give us a jump start on some of these. And we can identify those. They have the signed contract, they'll be starting work on that probably sometime next week, so we'll have a completion on that sometime, they said by February.
So right now, we could put in for these 3 projects, in March, we can put in for more projects.
Correct, or.
Keep submitting all
And-
projects that we come up with and.
And even in further discussions with Minco, if we say, look, we need some more projects and you need to identify the cost on those, we can work with them in the interim too to get those projects put on a schedule too.
Yeah.
So we'll have those commitments, and then if there's any other funds, we may be able to go after those.
I mean, this just seems like a really good opportunity to
Yeah.
get the whole city wired.
It does.
Yeah.
And,
Can you go
and I think we need to identify every area. And if the costs are really outrageous, then they're outrageous, we'll make decisions that way, but.
Now, they have $3 million, and we can,
Yeah, so I gotta think, if it's expansion of broadband, I mean, Coon Rapids, Blaine, they're fairly well set. You know, they're gonna have
it's
areas.
up here where Midco is
Yeah.
working right now, that's,
Well, but it's other
Yeah.
providers, it isn't just Midco. I mean,
no,
other-
it's not just Midco, but Midco is pushing hard now in, and going across 237th over to St. Francis and all that area in between right now, that's where they're digging.
True. And this map,
Mm-hmm.
Midco covers the dark brown, light brown, or the yellow?
Well, this map is so generalized, there's also some gaps in service. The brown areas are the ones that they say are currently served.
Okay,
These areas in orange are areas that are to be served and projects are to be completed. Now, this map was done in 2016. So a lot of these orange areas, this is the area where Tim lives, this has been done. This is over off 209th and Durant. This area, I believe, has been done.
That's done, yeah.
Up here, Fish Lake, Meadows of Fish Lake has been done.
Go up over where off 230, that's been done now.
Yeah, that's.
That's
some-
finally done.
so most
Yeah.
of the yellow is not done? Is that what you're
Most
saying?
of that yellow is
Most-
undeveloped.
Anything that's not brown or light brown doesn't have anything.
No.
And right now, they have no plans shown.
And a lot of this, especially this area right up in here, this is all University of Minnesota property.
Okay, right.
Some of this area here is undevelopable or has very low densities. That's what we're gonna get some results from this study. But there may be extensions in here that can be done if there's extra money to incentivize Midco to make these extensions and supplement some of their projects.
What about those new development areas that we just approved through, what was it called?
Anderson.
That's right here. So they'll have it, it's just a natural extension off of what they already have.
Okay,
I would imagine it going with the road.
Yeah,
So do we have a requirement that they go in for every new development? I mean, how do we make sure?
we don't have that requirement now. It's something we could certainly add to our subdivision ordinance and probably should. What we've been finding is all new developments, in order to successfully market that, if it's available, they add it.
I mean, like your development, I still don't understand how they get cable in it, that's fairly new.
How did mine not? Mine was built in '05, and that whole area up there, none of that has it.
Well, these are the trunk line.
Yeah.
You're like 1,000 feet off the trunk line. and
Yeah,
you're
well, we're
laying
right.
wire.
65 and Davenport and all those had Midco, and it didn't come back to the new houses. Everything on one side of 237 and up to Davenport had it.
So, yeah, whatever we need to do to make sure that, this happens for all future developments, it's service, so.
But, and I think, this is a great opportunity starting out along with the Finley study. I think we can hit the ground running and get some things done immediately, and then use that Finley study to get some more projects on board and talk with Midco to see what they can do to accelerate some of their plans for extension based on our participation with them in aids to construction.
Okay. So aside from, I think getting clarification on what the matching grants constitutes, and if it is how you're saying it, I mean, I think we need to ask the question, what if we were to subcontract the work ourselves? How does that affect the matching grant? So,
I will get that answered and try to get something back to council on Monday.
okay, so then to answer your question that you had is, we would have to come up with 75,000, is that what, no?
150, if it's dollar for dollar, we can apply for 75, we can apply for 100, 150, whatever we want.
But we'd have to come up with, right now it's $70,000?
No, if we apply for 70, yeah, we'd have to come up with 70.
So we'd have to come up with 70 for those three projects.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
So the question is,
Yeah.
where from our funds are we gonna get $70,000?
Well, what we would have to do, there's probably $70,000, there may be enough in the general fund to still keep us above our minimum account balance. There's some money that we could talk about, maybe a little bit more from EDA. And the other thing we'd have to do is decide how we're gonna get our money back. Is it gonna be through a special assessment? Is it going to be through talking with Midco to see if they would charge extra on their billing and then pay us? Or how we want to do that?
So the residents would be paying that,
I would think we would want to do that.
what if they don't contract with Midco?
If they don't accept the service, you mean?
Right, yeah,
Well, they would still, you'd still assess them if you want to do the assessment. Now, if we do, let's say we do $70,000 and it's for 56 homes, that's gonna be roughly $1,200 a home. Now, I've heard reports too that when people have asked Midco to do these shorter extensions, that the cost could be $4,000 or $5,000. But if you do the assessment, it'd be depending on the term you want, let's say you did it for 3 years, that'd be $400 a year. So it just depends on how bad people want
Well,
the
yeah, I
internet
mean,
service.
Mike, okay, I didn't realize this is where we're going with it.
But it's a question we have to answer, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, to me, you fast forward to the special assessment hearing, we have to prove an increase in value to the property based on the special assessment. We're not gonna, to get cable TV?
Well, this is for internet service. This has nothing to do with cable TV, this is for internet.
Right, well,
What does internet add in value to a piece of
or
property?
even
I
the
don't
internet.
know.
But-
It depends on who's buying it.
Yeah. I don't think there's a set. I guess I didn't realize, as Steve, I think, is saying, that we were gonna consider assessing the residents. I
Well-
thought we were going to
We
be
don't,
generous.
we don't have to assess them. Assessments
I'm not for assessing
is
them.
an option, but, if there's no way to recover this, we're subsidizing people's internet extension service.
But everybody
So,
else-
so like where they put mine in, we didn't pay anything as a city for that.
No,
Midco came in and just
Correct.
did that. So if we waited long enough, Midco would eventually pick up some of these areas.
No.
No.
Maybe.
We got these areas done because we've been pushing for years to get some of this stuff done, so.
You know,
So there's the other rub is, you know, there's got to be a cost.
Well, the reason why we have these are areas that Midco, you know, based on their criteria, wouldn't service. It's too expensive for them to service, so they won't do it. So there's nothing forcing them to do that, so.
Yeah, the population is way too low for them
Yeah.
to get a profit out of, unless they get extra money like we're doing
and
with this grant.
for this area down here, let's use this one for example, because I've heard some quotes on this. This is the area between Briarwood and Deerwood Lane. This is where Catherine Landcrane lives.
Mhm.
And she says, over here on the eastern side from Deerwood Lane, she can see her neighbors that have internet service. The reason they have it and she don't is it's fed from the east to the west, and once it reaches this point, it's at its maximum capacity. In order to service this neighborhood, they're either gonna have to upgrade this east-west feed or feed it off of Highway 65. So, the cost to do that, she said, I can't remember, I think she said it cost them $4,000 or $5,000 per household if they wanted to service and they could get everybody to sign up.
That sounds about right, what we were told off of Gopher too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
know.
sounds like that same dollar amount.
So with this, and just as an example, just based on that, you know, we're talking about cutting that price down by 75%. Now, again, council can decide what they want to, if they want to assess it and try to recover that, so they can keep rolling this money over to keep this provision going to other neighborhoods, or if you just want to do it as a service.
I think I need to think about this.
I'm really not interested in assessing just because most of the city who has internet has never been assessed. And I understand that the city didn't pay for it, but it's still
Yeah.
not equal.
And I understand that, but you have to consider that, you know, if you're looking for a home now, what's one of the first things that people look for? They get their cell phone out, do I have cell phone service, do I have internet service?
Yeah, they usually don't think about it till they move in, that's the
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah,
And I
so.
moved in, that was
Well-
me, I moved in and then I discovered
Schools?
I had no choice.
And-
I moved in.
And that does add value to the property.
Yeah, it depends on who's moving in. If you're of the older generation,
Mhm.
you may not think about it. If you're of the younger
Yeah.
generation, that is one of the things that you are looking at. It's,
Well, if it comes down to a choice between doing special assessments to the affected properties or using general levy dollars to fund this, you gotta do the special assessment, cause they're the
Yeah.
ones that are benefiting. I
Mhm.
mean, the positive, I don't know, positive, but the good part of the assessment project is for 6 properties, they're gonna be told what they're gonna be assessed to do this. And we treat it just like a road project.
Yep.
If there's not enough interest to pay for this, then they're gonna
Doesn't get
say,
done.
they're gonna say no. And quite honestly, you know, with, you know, whatever future internet services are coming up, if it's gonna go all satellite, why would someone pay $1,500 to get internet when next year they're gonna be able to do it off of Lancaster or whatever's out there, so.
Yeah, that's a good point, of course, you know, there's still some questions about the satellite service, you know, whether.
But I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
for
Yep.
a person making a decision, you know, to accept the assessment or not, so.
well, one part of Finley's analysis is grants and other sources of funding. I wonder, just putting the thought out there, that if there would be another grant that would cover the city's portion of this. I don't know. Just one thought, though.
You know, I don't know if there are or not. Usually there aren't grants to cover grants. There may be special cases where there are, so I won't say that it's not a possibility. And generally, most grants we're gonna deal with are gonna have matching funds associated with them in some ratio or another. So, you know, if we wanna proceed with these, we're gonna have to recognize that we're gonna have to have some skin in the game, and We just need to decide how we come up with those dollars.
You know, when you talk to the county, here's my, I mean, you look at big picture. So if all the communities are doing the same thing, just trying to expand broadband. Okay, out on, we'll call it the northern tier, Oak Grove, now then all of us on the north side, we're also spread out. So what that means is the cost per foot is a lot higher to do things than it is in Blaine or Coon Rapids or somewhere it's more urbanized, right? So and Blaine, Coon Rapids, their communities have far greater resources in terms of their budgets and everything else in order to do that matching part. So we get, out here, we get nailed twice on it because not only is our costs higher because of the distance per mile per home, but if we have to kick in that matching grant, now we're using a higher percentage of our tax levy to do something than communities like Blaine and other developed communities can. So it's not,
It's not
we can't be
equitable.
competitive with the communities down in the southern part of the county then. Maybe I'm looking at it too simple, but I gotta think doing projects in Blaine's gonna be a lot cheaper than doing projects out here when they have to put, 200 feet between houses, so, and not 20 feet
Well, and they'll put
between
theirs in
houses.
apartment buildings, and that's
Yeah,
what's
I
going
mean-
up in Blaine right now is apartments and townhouses, and
But I'm
there's
sure,
no
I'm
cost
sure
per
there's
foot.
areas of those communities that aren't served too. I mean, it's gonna happen, but,
Well, and you can not only serve areas that aren't served, but areas that are underserved. So like in Blaine, there may be areas where they don't have good service, so some of this money may be used to actually replace existing infrastructure, like from coax to fiber.
right, which again is more cost effective there than it is to do it here. So not only we're taking the same part of the pie, even though our costs are higher, it's harder for us to fund it because we have less resources to fund it. So when you talk to Samantha, I think, ask about that. I still think if why not contract Midco directly and have it part of our costs?
I'll get a clarification on that.
Yeah, because otherwise,
well, and when we're looking at 56 households compared to our, what's our number now, 4,000 something?
Roughly 4,400.
Yeah, you're looking at 56 households and spending $70,000.
yeah, it's 1,500 per
That's-
household.
Yeah,
It's- What going into this, this is not expanding internet service is not going to be cheap, no matter what we do. So, there's gonna be some cost associated with it. This is a way to do it that lessens the cost per household, so, so far it's the best option we've seen. Doesn't mean it's the last option we consider, but, it's something we need to look at.
So what does $70,000 represent on a percentage of a levy increase? 0.5%?
No, $70,000 represents about 1%. A little more than, maybe a little bit more than
So that'd
one.
be raising everyone's taxes by that percentage.
that's
To
where
allow
I'm getting
se-
at,
to allow
56
50
to
people to
40,
get-
yeah,
yeah, so-
4,400 households.
That's what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that
That's
using that kind of
not-
general levy funds is not gonna be workable at all.
It's not gonna be, it's
No,
not gonna make everybody happy.
The only thing is we could have something we're gonna have to do something to get some kind of seed money to match initially. But then if we can do that and keep turning it over, it becomes kind of like a revolving financing fund.
But how does it turn over? How do we get the money back?
Do the-
Assessments.
The
Oh, it's through
assessments and the
assessments.
payback, yeah.
Okay.
That's the only way.
Yeah.
Well,
So
good
you're gonna get answers for Monday.
Yes.
clarification, okay. All right. Is there anything else on this? Not, we'll move on. Item 5, complaint procedures.
Councilmember Suzanne Urkel expressed concern that there was bias in the city's complaint procedure. She stated that residents had contacted her with complaints that they weren't satisfied with responses by city staff. She also stated that city staff did not know the follow-up results of residents' complaints and wanted to discuss this matter at a work session. The following are the protocols for residents that wish to file complaints regarding conduct or action of city staff. Number 1 is to inform the city administrator by email or communicate the issue by phone. Number 2, or in conjunction with, is to inform a city council member and communicate the concern. Number 3 is to file a formal written complaint on the matter by using the form on the city website. If the complaint is in regards to the conduct or decision or actions of the city administrator, residents can inform the mayor or council of the issues to have it addressed. If the complaint is regarding an administrative decision by city staff and there is no resolution to the matter between the parties, that person may request an administrative appeal before the city council under City Code, Section 2590. This is our current procedure, so with that, I will open this up for any discussion that wishes to be done on the matter.
Okay, and I could rattle off names, but I don't have permission to rattle off names, so I'm not going to right now. But there are several people who have called and complained, and so it says inform a city council member. So if they inform me, what am I supposed to do? Bring it up here and discuss it with you guys? I don't even know what I'm.
Well, what I do is, the first thing I do is just communicate the same thing to Jack.
Get their name, phone number, email, whatever, and inform Jack of that complaint.
Well, the thing is, Jack knows of some of these complaints because they've called Jack and talked to him. So they say. Now, remember that I hear from them, their side of the story. And I don't usually call Jack because I feel like I just want to know their side of the story at this particular point in time. To proceed, so they tell me, and I don't have the power to do anything. The council really doesn't have a lot of power to do anything. If they have to go down to this thing where they have a hearing, that seems to be like it's going to be a problem, because as we listen to people who come up to this podium, a lot of people are not very articulate. They don't know how to explain their problems. They don't know what their issues are legally, the legal terms, that kind of thing. And when they do, when I hear them and when I hear responses, I hear a lot of spinning. I hear a lot of almost blowing them off, so to speak. And I'm only one person up here, and I know a lot of you guys don't agree with things that I'm always for the residents. I always want to stand up for the residents. I think that's supposed to be our
Well, I think we all are.
responsibility.
I think we all
And
are.
it doesn't seem like that's going on here. Anyways, so my feeling is, if somebody has a complaint against Stephanie or Aaron or something, it goes to Jack. And Jack is a little bit biased because from what I see, he treats them all so good, which is a good thing, like their family. And I don't ever see or know if these things that people are complaining about are getting put in their reviews, if it's true, or stuff like that. So I'm not sure Jack isn't a little biased towards staff. I see the council is very biased towards staff, and always sides with staff, it seems like.
Is it side with staff or side with ordinances and side with,
Right.
the
Or
regulations?
that's true, but in some cases, we can make the decision to change that ordinance easily. We could do that, and we don't.
Well, not easily in many occurrences. And if the ordinance is in place, we have an obligation to follow that.
Until such time
And
it can be
we've
changed?
changed ordinances just like that since I've been here, so it is easy to change an ordinance.
It
I've
is.
seen
Yeah.
it. So don't say it's not easy, because when I first got here, I thought, what, okay, it's an ordinance, from some things the mayor said, we can't change it, but then I see ordinance being changed just like this, and I'm like, wait a minute, we can change an ordinance, it's no problem.
Well,
But
Suzanne, there's a difference between the ability to change the ordinance and the will to change the ordinance. And I know in two instances in the past past years, you wanted ordinances changed. And you were on the losing end of a decision by council.
I understand that. I'm not complaining about that, but
But you,
that's
but you
not why
are,
I'm
because
concerned right now.
you're making a defense for someone who disagrees the council's decision or whatever the ordinance states. So, well, we can just change the ordinance. Well, the rest of the council doesn't want to change the ordinance, so,
I understand that.
and it seems like you're not respecting those decisions.
Oh, I am, but that's not, my issue is, right now is, I'm just using that as an example. My issue is the complaint procedure, and I think,
So how would you like to be it changed? Did you come to us with a suggestion on how to
I
change it?
do, I
Okay.
do have ideas.
All right.
So I think maybe we should get other cities involved, Oak Grove or Lindstrom or Linwood or Columbus or something like that, and let the resident be able to complain to their attorney or their, somebody over there, because that way there's no bias. Because if it's against Jack, it goes to the attorney. The attorney has bias, or it goes to a hearing.
Suzanne, let me correct you on that. If a complaint's against me, it does not go to the city attorney, it goes to city council.
How does it get to city council?
By the resident calling the mayor or one of the council members.
And they have to do this, write a letter.
They can just pick up the phone and call and say, Steve, I have a complaint against Jack. And they'll explain it to him, and Steve will call me. Same way as Tim will call you, and you can come to me. Any of the council members can take that complaint and give me a call.
And then what? Then where does it go?
Well, it depends on
What council decides.
what council decides.
Because I haven't seen anything, well.
We haven't had any
I haven't seen
complaints
any
filed.
complaints.
I mean, Suzanne, you're talking about all these complaints you get. I haven't seen any complaints.
And
We-
you won't
we've
bring
any-
us names or any
how many-
suggestions,
how many-
so.
How many formal complaints have we had, Jack, through the system on staff?
Almost none. I'd have to look. There may have been one or two in the past since we implemented that written complaint system on the website 8 or 9 years ago, but almost none.
So I guess my question, Stan, is what's not being done? You say, you make it sound like there's all these complaints and nothing ever gets done, but we don't have any complaints. There's
Well, I get. a
There's
lot of
complaining, and then there's complaints.
complaints.
I think what you're hearing is complaining, not complaints. A complaint is an action.
About a specific particular thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we had that, we had
Complaining is
something-
just, the city's hard to work with. Well,
Well, I understand.
why is a city hard to work with? But I want to address what you're talking about, going to a different city. You come from the military. You have a military background and you have business background. If something's going on within the military, you go just high up the ranks. You don't go, if you're in the Air Force, you don't go to the Army and say, I have a problem with whatever.
No, I
In
go-
private business, if I am running a private business and I have problems within my business, I don't go next door and ask them to hear my business problems out. You kind of keep it in-house, and you should have the checks and balances in-house in order to make it work. But I'm also, I said this last week when you were talking about the Coon Lake problem. Everybody's complaining to you about the guy who's going down the street, right, or calling on every complaint in Coon Lake. I still haven't heard any. You weren't here at that meeting. But none of us have heard them, so I don't understand how you can have 5 council members and none of us are hearing this. Is it, I don't know what it is. Is it why?
Well, they told me they were going to come here in September, and they didn't. I'm going to call them and see if they'll come in November.
Is it still a complaint? Is it still a problem?
Actually, I don't know. I haven't talked to them since.
Maybe it got
the
resolved.
Beginning of October, so I don't know, but I know a lot of them have been very unhappy. And, especially those down around the community center area, that particular area.
Is it people you have personal relationships
No,
with?
I've never met most of these people since, some of them I only know.
Or people who you have personal relationships are giving them your name? Because I don't have a personal relationship with anybody in Coon Lake, so I probably
I
wouldn't
don't really
hear.
have personal relationships with most people.
I might with Smokies,
Smokies.
just 'cause I go there a lot.
Suzanne, could I ask you if it involves code enforcement issues?
Some of them are code enforcement, some of them are that you're not getting back to them, they have questions. One person said, one person called me like 3 times, it's like, I am just so frustrated, I'm gonna go up there and ream Jack out, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't, I don't know, I didn't ask you. Some of them, so I'm thinking some of them have came up and just got the stuff off of their chest after they got it off their chest after talking to me, but some of them are people who their code enforcement have escalated to courts and all that kind of stuff. Some of them, it's the cost that, and some of them it's, well, how come they got to do this and I can't do this? How come that resident got to do this? And I think about the lady who, with the guy who built the shed 50 feet from the water, who got away with that. And other people have used that. Other people have used the fence on Colleen Street, the guy who brought in the dirt as an example, as how come he gets to bring in dirt and have a 10-foot fence and I can't even have a 6-foot fence or a 4-foot fence?
Can I ask something else? Because I sat in a planning commission meeting, the guy that had the fence issue and the other one, and during the meeting, you went up to them and you gave them your name and address.
Yep.
And you said, or your name and your phone number, and you said, call me. So are some of these
No,
complaints?
I didn't give him my name and address. I told him the notes had come to the meeting on Monday.
No, the note said, we sat, I'm sorry, I'm gonna argue with you. I sat right exactly where Jim is, and Karen Kreppis sat exactly next to the person, and we could see the note clear as day.
Well, maybe.
So my question is, are these people following up with you because you've asked them to follow up with you? That's not wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, is that why you're getting the phone calls and we're not? Because you're interjecting after we've made a decision.
Yeah, I did give one person my name and phone number, but I also told somebody to come to the meeting on Monday. So there were different notes that I passed out.
Okay. I'm just wondering that if that's, the planning commission told him no, and you wrote the note to have him call you, and then he came to our meeting with the medical information, and so obviously I thought you had talked to him.
Yeah, he didn't call me, but he talked to me, and I told him to have like bullets and to be, write down what he was gonna say and stuff, because he was kinda all over the place.
Well, and that's just my question. If it's not wrong, but if that's why you're getting all these phone calls is because you're initiating a contact,
Well,
then
some of
there's
them have told
nothing.
me they've called other people, other council members too, and have gotten nowhere, so, and honestly, I don't know how much they tell me it is 100% factual. I'm just telling you what people are constantly telling me, and therefore I am bringing it up to council, which kind of is what this says I'm supposed to do.
Right, but in this case and in other cases, you kind of bring it in as a generality. We
Yes.
don't get any specifics, you know, like, as I talked to Jack before this meeting, there's a resident along the lake had a complaint, and I looked into it, and I passed it off to Jack. I'm not gonna resolve it, but I wanna make sure it gets to the right hands. But if you're getting all these complaints and you're not sending it on to staff to follow up, it's not staff's
Because
problem for not addressing it, because they're not aware of it.
But if you don't know that the staff, if you haven't checked with staff to see if it was followed up on, then you don't know that maybe staff did follow up, or maybe there's another side to the story.
Well,
I did follow up
Well-
with the person with the shed. There's another side to the story.
and they showed me email, some of them have shown me responses they've gotten.
Then that's what you need to bring
which
us
I
is
found very
specifics.
unsatisfactory,
Specifics.
which I agreed with them, it was an unsatisfactory response.
I mean, when I get emails of that, I usually copy resident back, or respond to them and copy Jack. And let them know staff's gonna take care of it. Staff will address it. I know it went to staff. The person that, you know, had the issue knows that at least got started to be addressed.
And does the resident end up being satisfied? Because if you're sending it to Jack, then are you?
You know,
sure the
sometimes,
resident is being
many
satisfied?
times, no, they're not. You know, sometimes when councils make decisions, residents aren't happy with the decision. That does not mean, you know, it's not being addressed. Because, you know, I suspect a lot of these complaints that are coming to you are because you're receptive to them. And they're issues that have been addressed by staff or by council in the past and didn't like the answers. And that's gonna happen. It's understandable. But, you know, just because they don't like the answer they're getting doesn't mean that it hasn't been answered. But Suzanne, unless we have something specific to talk about, we can't sit here and talk about generalities, because you don't even know if what you're being told is the truth. You've said it a couple times already.
Well,
So-
it's true, because I don't do the full circle thing, you know, and there's always two sides to a different story. And in my head, I imagine the city side, but
But why, Matt? You can talk to the city. This is the staff that reports to council. You don't have to imagine what
Well,
was
I'll
going on.
bring-
You can talk to staff
I'll
and
bring the
ask them.
specifics. I'll make sure I get permission from them, and I will bring the specifics.
Why do you need permission?
Yeah, if
from
they
them?
want something addressed, you're not gonna do it
Because
magically.
These people have said to me that they don't want, they don't trust, they won't email me because they don't trust the city, using my city email, because they don't trust the city. They have told me that they don't fill out complaints because they want it to be anonymous and stuff like that. So that's why I'm not using their names right now.
Okay.
But I will get their
And I
permission.
think part of the reason they contact you and not us, because you've made statements twice tonight that you don't trust staff. And you've said this in previous meetings too. So
I trust staff. I say,
not tonight, twice in this discussion, you said you don't trust staff in the way complaints are handled.
in that, yeah.
And
Well,
you suggested having other cities involved in complaint
well,
procedure.
Because I think there's bias going on. So it's not a discredit.
Describe bias.
Where, I did describe it, where Jack sides with the
Decides or sides?
sides, takes the side of the people, the other staff members that work back there, because whether they're right or wrong, because they're his employees.
Well,
And I've kind of done that in the past with my people who work for me. I've stood by them, no matter what. So I can kind of see how that might be happening, but I don't know.
well, I've talked with Jack in private, one-on-one, about certain issues in the past with city personnel and how things are handled. And Jack handles them appropriately. Yes, in the office, he wants to be friendly with everybody, and it's a good work environment that way, but in private, he will address and I haven't seen bias towards employees from him.
Suzanne, we don't side with city staff, we side with city ordinances. And that's where the rub lies with a lot of people, is they're not happy with the ordinance, and there's an option to that, and that's to try to get the ordinance changed, but then that's up to the vote of the council.
Yep, there's, in the history of East Bethel, we didn't always have a city administrator, we had a city clerk. And I've heard lots of stories of, well, she's the person at the front desk, she's the one that is answering questions from people, residents that are coming in, and she unfortunately had the job to tell them, no, you can't do this, or no, you can't do that, or et cetera. And well, a lot of people took that negatively as, oh, this city clerk is so mean. But she was just doing her job of saying no. It's,
Well, I get that too.
So we'll hold it up.
Well, what would you like changed?
You know what, I'm gonna bring this back, I'm gonna talk to these residents, I'm gonna either convince them to come here and speak at the public forum, or, I'm going to, get permission to use their name up here and their specific story. And before I do that, I will call Jack and tell him what the story is and who it is, but I'm still gonna bring it up.
Okay, so you don't,
So we,
I mean, the subject matter was procedures, not specifics.
right,
It kind of
it's
diverged. there.
procedures, because once we get the procedures nailed down, and then we will know for sure if we need to, the situations nailed, sorted through, then we will know for sure if we need to change the procedure. And maybe it's very possible I'm 100% wrong. And I don't have a problem admitting being wrong.
Well, let's just wait and see
Yeah.
what
So
you
if you
have.
don't
complaints you
mind,
come up
if you
with.
don't mind us
Yeah.
bringing this back up in a month or two, it depends on how easy it is for me to get in touch with people.
All right. Okay,
Thank you.
anything else in this?
No,
Okay, then we'll move on to city services frontage road plans.
I wonder if it might be we got 20 minutes left roughly, if we skip this item until next month, because I think this should be a long discussion item, and address item number 7, vacate.
There's nothing pressing on this, Jen?
No.
If you'd like,
I think it's worthy of discussion of more than 15 minutes. Just
well,
to
let's
get through it.
do this. Let's skip number 6 and go to number 7 first then.
Okay.
Okay.
Item number 7 is I received a call, had a discussion with a resident of Coon Lake Beach last Friday. It was Catherine and Patrick Johnson. If you recall, in 2016, they applied to the city for a vacation of Longfellow Drive and a small portion of Birch Road, which intersected with Longfellow. These were platted streets, but they were never developed. At the time, they were looking at building a detached garage, and the only area that they could build on was in that area of Longfellow. City council heard 3 or 4 meetings with them. There was an attorney from Steve Thorson from Barna, Guzzi, and I can't remember the last name of the firm, who came here several times. We worked with Mr. Thorson, and in the end, council decided to vacate that property. It was, the city attorney did, in his opinion, we could sell it to them in that case because we owned the property to the south of them. So state vacation laws for city streets require, though, that when a street is vacated, it goes to the adjoining property owners. So what they're considering now is requesting a vacation of another smaller portion of Birch Road. It's the portion that's still platted, but it's undeveloped. And it's between property that they just recently bought and Amy and John Swisher. And I informed Mrs. Johnson that if the vacation was to be considered, that it would be split between the two property owners. The city could not sell it, but that would have to be a consideration city council would need to make if they wanted to proceed with that. So,
Do you have a map of
yeah,
that?
it's gone off. I'll find it here again. Hang on just a minute. I had it up, but it timed out.
I remember it. But this is the
So
area,
now they want to do
I'm guessing.
this part, this back part. I do remember it because it was this,
Yeah, they have
That,
this property.
yeah. So it must be this here, and that little part of the road. It'd have to be split.
Yeah, it's just this part right here.
Birchwood.
This was the Johnson's property before the street was vacated. They owned this lot here, which fronts Cedar Road. And then it was separated by a section of Birch Street, and then they owned the lot behind that. This portion of Birch Street is, like I said, it's platted, but it was never developed. And this 80 feet going north, this is also Birch Street. It's platted, but it's not developed either. So in the vacation process, the city was able to sell this portion of Birch Street and this lower shaded portion of Longfellow Drive to the Johnsons. They had plans to build a garage in this area. This was the only place they could build it because of wetlands and floodplains. The city owns all the property south of here, essentially with the exception of a few parcels all the way down to the Ham Lake border. So after several discussions, the council said, we have no plans of it being able to extend this street. There's another right-of-way here for Lake Shore Drive, but half of it's underwater depending on the level of the lake. So this section of platted right-of-way for a future street was not needed, and it was sold to the Johnsons. Now what they're requesting, they bought this piece of property here and this piece of property here, and they're requesting the vacation of this section of Birch Street.
And somebody else owns the property to the left.
Amy and John Swisher own this parcel right here.
Okay.
Now, how big are those parcels?
These are like 20-foot lots.
The dotted lines.
Yeah. So this,
That's the old
this right
lots.
here is roughly 2,000 square feet.
Jack, the right way to do this, would it be to, if we did vacate it, half to Johnson's, half to Swishers, and then Johnson's would have to go to Swishers, right? To buy that half?
If they wanted to eventually.
If that's the way they want
yeah,
to do it?
Yeah, but that's up to them after it's
Right,
over.
right.
The only thing we can do is if it's vacated, then half of it goes
Goes
to
to
the
one and half
Johnsons,
goes to the
half
other.
of it goes to the
And then it's up to
Swishers.
those two to decide.
And
And
if
they
they,
pay the city?
no,
No.
because we can't sell it
We can't sell it, so.
in this case.
So your
But-
question is whether this should come to council, or?
Yeah, I'm just bringing this up to see if we want to consider this as a,
It's not any
Consideration.
really any different than what they did before, so
No.
I don't know why we would not
No.
consider it, so. There's a public hearing that's involved with it?
there'll be public hearings involved with it. We'll also have to contact the DNR. The DNR has to comment on it since it's in the Shoreland Overlay
Yeah.
District. So there's several steps to it, but it mirrors almost essentially the same thing we did back in 2016.
Does it border the lake?
No, the lake's right over here. It has no lake frontage. The
Can you
lake-
can you bring it up on GIS?
Yeah, sure can.
I don't know, the lake keeps dropping, we may be able to
Yeah.
build Lake Shore Drive.
So this area in red is currently now the Johnson's property that includes that previously vacated section of Longfellow and that little stub of Birch. So what they're asking for is to vacate this section of Birch Street right here. Birch Street comes down here and dead ends. It's never gonna be extended any further. It's never gonna make a loop to connect up to another street. As you can see, there's only three houses per side on Birch Street as it goes south from Lincoln Drive.
Do we have any problem with dumping at the end of that road?
No, I think Mrs. Johnson said their biggest concern was people coming down through here and trying to drive on their property. There is a berm at the end of this road right here. You can get over it a little bit, but it's put there to prevent any traffic from trying to go on south.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think anyone's adverse to considering it, so have them apply.
I wanna
Okay.
drive down there and look at it, but other than that, I don't think I have a problem with it.
As I said, and as everyone pointed out previously, it's essentially the same process that we did 5 years ago. This is street right-of-way that can never be used.
All right. Anything else on this?
That's all I have. I have the direction, and I will inform them of how we
Okay.
need to proceed on this.
And let's go back, consider item 6. We have 15 minutes. You want to present it, Zach?
Sure. First, all the city council was there. We had a grand opening of Sand Hill Parkway last Friday, which was well
Cold.
attended.
It was cold, it was windy.
Well attended and a good crowd, and I'm gonna be positive the sun was shining,
Yeah,
so.
it was.
But, and we've taken up the naming of several street segments that follow this proposed alignment going north in 3 different areas now. So what I want to talk about too is trying to stay ahead of the curve and trying to come up with some potential projects for the upcoming years. And it would probably be at least 2023 till we could consider one. Or in the case of what I consider would be the highest priority in the water and sewer district, may be a decision of how the developer wants to align a road and what his cost participation would be in it. This black line, as you can see on the screen, is the portion of Sand Hill Parkway that was just finished and opened last Friday. If you go further down to Route 65 Liquors and Doug Osborne's building where the Snap Fitness facility is, he dedicated to the city a 66-foot right-of-way between those 2 properties.
I always wondered why that was so wide through there, I never realized that.
And it's between here and part of it even, I think, maybe takes a little part of the liquor store parking lot. He owns both of those buildings, so one of the future ways to connect essentially 181st Avenue, which is the East Bethel-Ham Lake border, going north, this is key to that because this black section already exists. It's built in terms of right-of-way and width to MSA standards. We could construct this portion right here, which is about 1,600 feet, which is about 1/3 the length of the service road, a little less than 1/3 the length. Tie it into Central Avenue and let it go north. And then we'd have a direct link where you didn't have to go on Route 65, again, all the way to Viking Boulevard. There is another section on this segment that goes behind the businesses from Central Trailer down to 65 Liquor that would make this road much more efficient. This one is not as critical, I think, as this section in the red is. Again, the alignment of this section in the red is subject to change, but it's one thing that I would like to start looking at to see what our possibilities and options are. If we build this road, it would require the installation of water and sewer, We do have the water and sewer stubbed over through this property, across the county ditch to a point approximately where the cursor is. So extending the water and sewer would be about 1,300 feet, which would be about 3,600 feet less than we did on the Sand Hill Drive Parkway project that was just completed. Rough cost estimates would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.5 to $2.8 million, and that's probably on the high side. Once we do get this segment in right here, then we would have this link, and not only would be enhance the accessibility of this area here and promote its efficiency as a service road, we would also have water and sewer service able to serve all this far southeastern quadrant here from 185th on the east side of Highway 65. In looking back on this, just in this section alone, I think at a chamber meeting about 5 years ago, we showed a diagram that showed these things, but the only thing that were completed were the existing roads. There's a section in black here, which is existing Buchanan Street, which was built in the early 2000s or late 1990s. And there was this little section of Aberdeen Street. Since that time, we've added almost a mile of service road here for Sand Hill Parkway. We've added a little bit of over a mile of service road here for Taylor Street. And we're getting close to our goal of finishing some of these out. At least we've made significant progress on this section. The section in yellow is one that would extend Buchanan Street south from the Met Council Waste Treatment Plant to skirt Village Green. This section would provide better traffic flow through this area. However, it doesn't open up anything or offer any real opportunities for development. Right-of-way costs would probably be fairly significant because there would be some purchase of Village Green property and some potential relocation of maybe some of the tenants there. But in this section right here, I just want to give a report that we're making significant progress in achieving the plan that we laid out 5 years ago. And I think it's time to start looking at what potentially could be the next phase of this and working with the property owner to come up with some participation on his part, see what can be done. And if we could get this red section done and eventually this yellow section done here, this section is not critical. It would be nice to have it in there, but these, to me, would be the priority sections for trying to complete all of our service roads, utility extensions in the water and sewer district, south of Viking Boulevard.
Jack, where's the property that was recently purchased, the old Executive 9? Where's the limits of that?
Right
It's
there,
right here,
right there and in the driving
in
range.
the driving range, it's right here.
So that section, what about to the south of there? That's still,
So the south of there is still part of that. You can see some of the holes as they're laid out here. A lot of this is wet. There hasn't been a wetland delineation done on it yet, so exactly how much is in there.
do they own that area too though?
Doug owns this area too.
Okay.
Doug owns everything from the golf course here south to Briarwood.
Oh,
He
okay.
owns all this, so, I did have a talk with him, after the chamber meeting and also at the ribbon cutting ceremony. And he informed me that they're completing one of their projects in Ham Lake related to their storage building. And as soon as they're finished with that, then he wants to move up here and get
I
started
heard
on
the same
something.
thing too.
So, you know, I think there's gonna be some movement on here, and I'd just like to try to stay ahead of the game. It's something that would be of little or no cost. It might involve a little bit of Craig's time to start putting some things together. The other thing we'll have to look into in seeing, we'd probably have to do some more advanced MSA funding, but we gotta make sure that doesn't interfere with any of our existing and planned projects. I did talk to Sheila and Calbar about these being potential projects. I didn't get any real commitment on that. But we could apply for the annual cooperative agreement grants from MnDOT that can be up to $750,000. So, I think it's time to start looking at what we can do here and at least be ahead of the curve so that if something does happen, that have some things that we can present and be ready to move on and maybe expedite some projects.
So I just have a question with the alignment on the Red Road. Does it have to come back in to Central Avenue, right there? Do we have to have a roadway through there, or can we just say if we're only gonna do this in 2 phases, the red phase and the yellow phase? If we did the red phase first, could we just run a road up there and cul-de-sac it, a temporary cul-de-sac? But through there, we'd still have sewer and water running underground.
You know, that could be a possibility too.
Because that would eliminate some blacktop costs. I just kind of think that portion right there is kind of redundant to,
Well, and again too, we're not even sure from this point down to Briarwood if this is even gonna be the correct alignment. This does line up good with the existing street. You know, you may have something that may eventually even come out here, even though it's gonna be offset. This is just one of many potential proposals.
Yep.
But doing this section here, I think is gonna, or a portion of this section where it's either the connection of the street over here to cross the county ditch with utility extensions going south to Briarwood, is gonna facilitate a lot of things and accelerate them as they happen in the future.
well, I'm totally in for the utility extensions going south. I'm just wondering about is having access there over to Central being too redundant.
I mean, you're right, I mean, it's redundant, and you look at that, and it's like, well, then why do we need Briarwood to the south there
Yeah.
along the highway? It's almost like get rid of that road, well, that doesn't make sense either, so. But yeah, I mean, I think it makes more sense to make that one project straight shot and not,
Straight shot.
I mean, you have the utilities going through there, I understand that, but we don't have to put a road over the utilities either, so.
No, and we would prefer to do it that way because it's a lot easier to access them. in
Well,
case
you're
of
not
maintenance.
crossing the county ditch and,
But this section in yellow needs no utilities.
is what?
Needs no utilities. This can be just a road anywhere
Didn't they
from,
do
But
that?
I'm saying when you do the road, we'll do it from Briarwood all the way up to 187th, not section it, so.
that would be ideal, if the financing were right. This is just could be a way to break the cost up. But depending on what any future plans are here, it would be nice, like you say, to do it as one complete project.
It would probably depend on what Mr. Osborne's looking at doing and his participation through there. Because that section you said was sold, right? That top section got sold.
owns all that, yeah.
Well,
So not to go through everything that we had, but to me, this one makes the most sense in terms of priorities of frontage roads, but.
Yes.
And probably the most likely to get state funding to support the frontage road system.
Well, I think anytime, and one thing that would probably be, have to be addressed on a application to MnDOT for their annual cooperative agreement grants is they usually look for something in exchange for money, and that's closures of access. So if this were to be submitted as a grant, there's the possibility that this right-in, right-out access on 184th Lane would be a candidate for closure.
I would expect the last for that, especially since the frontage road's kind of
Yeah,
taking
and-
care of that.
and it's there now, and, you know, I'm sure there would be probably some issues or people saying, well, it's gonna hurt access to my business. But with the frontage road in and all this complete north-south access, you can access it from this point or even up at 87th Lane, so it's not gonna deter too much from people getting in and out of there.
And that's a dangerous turn anyway. If you're
Yep,
coming up that
yep.
road and
We've
people
had
are
a
going
couple.
75, 80, and you try to make that right turn right there, because there's no right turn lane or anything.
Jack, I'm just kinda curious, I hear there's a lot of interest up on the west side too, up towards like, where Johnson Street was going through to Sims or something, that the bank is, might be looking into doing some work up there. I know there's a little chunk of service road up there too. I mean, I like the south end, but, who's gonna push the button first,
Well, the difference is
On
we
the
don't
west
have.
end?
There's no sewer and water up
Yeah,
there,
no
but I'm
sewer
just saying
water,
for as
yeah.
far as service road projects,
Well, and this is another area, at some point, and I think we're getting closer to that point all the time, the city's gonna have to decide what's our next step once the service area we currently have is fairly well developed. Are we going to do another service node? Are we gonna stop where we are? And if we decide to do another node, probably the Sims Road, Highway 65 area is probably the best place to look at it, at least on the surface. We have an area between 205th Avenue, this is the old Hunter's Inn building down here, all the way up to 221st, which probably has the most contiguous developable properties in the city. It does not have utility service. We currently have this little section of service road here, which is Johnson Street. It ends in two cul-de-sacs. This is 209th, so Dollar General's here and Pat Small Engines is here. Cambridge State Bank owns this parcel. They're highly interested in developing it. In fact, they're gonna be presenting, some concept plan for a preliminary plat to the planning commission at their next meeting. This section here, this 40 acres, we've had quite a bit of interest in it lately. The realtor, for the property and the owner met with us once just to discuss some general things. And, I told them that, we don't have any definite timelines for water and sewer. I said it's gonna depend on a lot of things. Said number one, it's probably gonna depend on a large scale development. Would also probably depend on being able to connect the schools up at the same time. And it would have to come up with a way of us being able to feasibly finance that. On the east side of Highway 65, as far as our service road plan and Sand Hill Parkway go, we have all this essentially finished by existing projects from 205th to 213th Avenue, 215th Avenue. There would have to be some improvements. Davenport Street between 209th and Sims is scheduled for a reconstruction project next year. We would try to upgrade that as much as possible as we could as far as right-of-way widths go. We can still meet MSA standards, but there's some narrow right-of-ways through there, a few houses, but we'll reconstruct it as best we can to meet those standards with curb and gutter and improved drainage. So we already have a large existing segment done there. The section from 209th to 205th was a project that was done in 2008, and it provided access to the ice arena. Previous access was almost a little dirt entrance off Highway 65, which was an accident waiting to happen. This was done in 2008. This Johnson Street portion was a new construction. It was done, I'm not sure, but it was done prior to 2005, maybe even 1998 or 2000, somewhere along
I
there.
don't think it was that long ago. I think it was 2000s.
And this section was done by special assessment to the property owners.
Really? They wanted it?
Yeah.
Yep. And, currently its current nickname is the Road to Nowhere, but it will eventually connect up to the north. Going south to make any connection is kind of problematic, because you can get access to this property by the end of this street here, which could be shortly extended, or this little piece here could be served by Hunter's Inn. Trying to connect this down to Klondike would be a major cost because this is all wetlands here. And there's some wetlands in here, and there's really nothing to access there. So this gap here between Johnson Street and 205th and Klondike may be a gap that may exist for a long time. Jumping back to Viking Boulevard to 205th is this area shown in yellow on each side with an orange segment here. This segment parallels the western boundary of the East Bethel Properties LLC, which is owned by County Market. Should anything happen there, this could be a potential service road with a potential connection either going east to 65 if they can get a right-in, right-out turn from MnDOT, or it could extend on up here to Klondike. There is some property in here that's sod fields. It's low. There's very little wetlands classifications in here, but it's most all of it's in the floodplain. So this is something that's going to be a long-term project or a long-term development. The same thing on the east side. If you go north from Viking Boulevard to 205th, you're crossing sod fields, lowlands, a lot of areas that are in floodplains. So these aren't priority projects at this time. Again, going back to Sims and talking about that section being done between 205th and 221st. There's a connection here from Johnson Street to 221st. The city owns this right-of-way currently. It was purchased back in 2012 or 2013. There was a MnDOT grant that was approved for this project through some confusion on MnDOT's part. We were given the go-ahead to proceed from the Metro District, and then the central office saw some things, and they came back and said in order to get the grant, we would have to ask all these property owners to surrender their access from Highway 65 as part of the closure to justify the grant. And if we didn't, the grant amount would be reduced, so the city canceled the project and lost the MnDOT grant. On the opposite side, this red section, this is where old Teddy Bear Daycare Center was. This is PBS Auto. We have this road plan to come up and intersect 221st, just east of Sandy Drive. There's been talk with the owner before. Actually, this project right here was scheduled to be done before this one, and we could not reach any type of right-of-way agreements or dedications with this owner at that time. This owner did file a development plan or a concept plan, or it was more of a sketch, probably back in 2008, 2009, in which he proposes to develop. He owns most all of this property. This is the landfill here, and some property back in here. He had it for some commercial development along Highway 65 and some housing development along these sections back here on 221st and some in the background behind the commercial area off Highway 65. So when the time comes that utilities can be feasibly installed here, then I think you'll see quite a bit of activity. You know, again, that's long-term. If we started trying to plan for utilities installation, you know, we're looking at a 3 to 5 year process at a minimum. 3 years would be an accelerated fast track and would not, I wouldn't
That's
anticipate
pretty
that.
much what we Sand Hill Parkway was about a 3-year project, right?
Well, Sand Hill, actually, when we started on some things earlier, but in November of 2019,
Right.
we sat down with MnDOT and they said, you've got the grant. 23 months later, through COVID, we got the project completed. So I thought that was an exceptionally fast pace to get that done. But this would involve quite a bit more because, you know, you're talking significant development for utilities. There would probably have to be another treatment plant, wells, water tower. So in order to service this area would be costly in terms of utilities. And I don't think we're gonna wanna do too much in the way of roads there unless utilities are ready to go in at the same time, so. Going north of 221st Avenue, there's quite a bit of property over here, but it's accessed by Sandy Drive. Again, there's no utilities. The big obstacle in going north of 221st is Cedar Creek. And it has a fairly extensive floodplain. Also, too, there's quite a bit of existing development that precludes an easy construction, or it's gonna be a costly road to build up to 237th. From 237th going northward, at some point, there will probably be a service road that connects 237th to 245th, but again, that's long range, and it just depends on what the White family ever wants to do with their property. I don't have it shown here too dark, but from 229th Avenue on the west side, you have Buchanan Street, which goes to this point and ends in the cul-de-sac. There is a short gap here between there and 233rd. But then, or Johnson Street. Johnson Street then goes north to 237th and then winds around here to 241st Avenue. So there is somewhat of a service road on there from those 2 points. Going further north of here would be, again, kind of like the Village Green project. You'd have to go through and do a significant amount of residential purchase and probably relocation of the trailer court. So that's kind of a long ways away. So in short, our probably plans and focus on service roads would be in our existing water and sewer district with those 2 projects on the east side of Highway 65 to connect Sand Hill Parkway up to the segment at Briarwood, which is 181st, which has been named Sand Hill Parkway 2. And beyond that is to start considerations or give some thought to what's gonna happen around the Sims Highway 65 intersection.
Okay. So what's next with this?
Well, what I would like to do is just start some preliminary work on the connection between where Sand Hill Park ends on the south and come up with some options on how to connect it down to Briarwood. Have some cost estimates so we can be able to proceed. You know, I think it would be at least a year before any real planning could start on that, but I think this section here is coming sooner rather than later.
Okay. Any other feedback for Jack tonight on this?
Yeah, I have no issues with that. It'd be nice to do that in one section, and
Not go out to,
again,
Central.
look at the option of not going out to Central. It's great that we have utility through there, but
Yep.
I don't know if we need more asphalt. Got lots of asphalt as it is.
Yep, stay in discussions with the Osborne and with MnDOT.
We'll
Hey.
pers-
Maybe we can have a nice rain garden put in over the 66-foot section.
All right, we'll start some discussions and see where this leads. And So we can at least lay some preliminary groundwork, so when this subject does come up for some serious discussion and decisions, we'll have some options and things we can take a look at.
Okay, good. That completes our agenda for tonight.
Just a reminder, Wednesday,
Wednesday night,
Yep.
6
Town-
o'clock, town hall meeting,
Town hall meeting.
right here.
with that, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Our work meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.